Welcome to Journey Through the Gate, your paranormal portal podcast, as we delve into the many questions and wonders brought on by the supernatural experience. What's on the other side of the gate? Let's find out together. Hello, listeners. Thanks for coming in tonight. Tonight we're going to have a little something different. I've invited our friend Joey Mormann back, and I have met somebody I'm really digging, and I'm really liking the conversation between the two of them, and that's his brother Josh, and I'm going to bring them in here in just a second, but I wanted to tell you this. Joey's got a great channel, if you've never seen it, on YouTube, Joey Mormann, usually live. And I can't describe it. Don't ask me to, but you're going to dig it. And the live chat's really great. And there's a lot of great people in there. So I highly recommend that when he's on, try to grab that. And if you're lucky enough, his brother will come along too. And the conversations are just fantastic. And we were talking the other day and I said, hey, come on my show and let's dig around and see if you guys know anything about paranormal or supernatural. And it's just a completely off-the-cuff conversation. So before further ado, let's welcome in this side of the gate, Mr. Joey Mormann. Come on in here, Joey. Say hi.
Hi, how are you?
I'm doing great. And his brother, Josh Mormann. Come on in. The Mormons, everybody. Come on in.
Hi there, how are you? This is Josh.
I really appreciate you guys coming up. We're going to have fun. I don't really know how to start all this, so I thought we'll get a little bit about you guys. You know, just tell listeners what you each want to know. Joey, you go first if you don't mind, and tell them a little bit about, how'd you get your YouTube? What made you start doing all that? Fantastic musician, by the way, and I hear Josh is a pretty good singer too, but we'll find out more about that later. What do you think, Joe? How'd you start in having your own YouTube channel and, getting your face out there and whatnot?
Well, it's free, so that helps. But I was in rock and roll bands and playing around and stuff like that, and it became more and more frustrating to work with people, more bandmates and stuff like that. And I wanted to just be able to have a creative outlet. So I went from making music and then wanting to do more than just music and doing, comedy sketches and short films and puppets and all kinds of stuff. I just wanted to do as much media as I could, because when you put yourself out there, you don't hate yourself for a little while, that kind of thing.
Right. And being creative, under your own rules or lack of rules for that, kind of an imaginary and pandemonium kind of thing.
Yeah. Just as much as possible. And then it became sort of political when the media seemed to go crazy, and I just couldn't help myself. I didn't think I would ever start talking about politics ever, but it just seemed like I couldn't. I was talking to myself in the car so much, like you're in the mirror. I was having political arguments in my head all over the place, so I decided to get it out,
And put an outlet. And Josh, now you've known this gentleman most of your life, I would assume.
Mm-hmm. All of it. Well,
all of my life.
All of his life, I've known him. Yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah. And are you a musician as well? I've heard you a little bit of singing, and I didn't know whether it was all in the family or what.
I'd say that everybody in the family has dabbled with music.
Okay.
My sister played the violin. I was probably the first aggressive musician in the family. I played the drums in a couple of different bands in high school.
Okay.
And I owned a bass and a guitar and some moderate equipment for those instruments as well. And did a lot of experimentation. But Joe, when I left the house, it was actually for a Mormon mission. Joe just kind of,
which are fun stories, by the way, folks.
Sorry?
I was going to say, which are fun stories, by the way.
Oh yeah,
to the
there's
listeners.
a lot of stories in there. You could, I got some interesting stories there that kind of range on the weird, just that we could maybe get to. But
Right. Well, absolutely. I mean, it's the thing is too is you guys play off of each other very well, and I think, and I've told Joey this before, I think he has a beautiful mind, and I don't mean that so much as a reference to a movie. I just mean that I try to throw him out. I try to throw him out stuff in live chat all the time. Like I'll see him stuck, and I'll just throw something out there. It's just anything, off the wall, and he'll start going, and I just love being able to do that with people. I used to, for many years I was a bartender. I was in a band, several of them, from early high school on, and I'm married to a musician. Have you guys ever heard of the Big Fat Pet Clams from Outer Space?
The Big Fat Clams from Outer Space?
No, Big Fat Pet Clams from Outer Space.
Pet clams.
Wow.
From outer space.
No,
okay. Well, you need to look them up. Joey, you would absolutely love them. They are one of 3 bands that played all 3 decades at CBGB's in New York City. Blondie was another one, and I can't remember the other. It might have been Dead Boys.
Okay, so there's somebody to have heard of then, for sure.
Yeah.
Okay.
He was the key. He's the keyboard player for Big Fat.
We'll have our second. Deborah, could you write that down?
I'm playing Deborah as well, so I'm taking that down.
That's nice.
That's important.
Big Fat. You do Pet Clams, or you do Big Fat Pet Clams from Outer Space. Yes, but anyway, they were. Gosh, I can't describe the music, but I think they're playing at CBGB's with the Ramones and Blondie and Dead Boys and everybody that played back there in like the late 60s through 70s, 80s, kind of thing. They're actually in the movie, by the way, the CBGB's movie. But anyhow, so I digress. Anyway, talking about musicians and things like that, I've been playing guitar most of my life. In fact, you're talking on stolen band equipment right now. This is stolen equipment? Yeah. I would say borrowed, but that would just be a lie. I took it.
Nice.
Yeah, I wanted to do a podcast. I'm like, you're not using this mixer, are you? How about that mic? So I got an SM58 I'm talking into you now, and headphones, all this stuff. Duct tape, lots of wires. It's amazing. So
I believe the Clash actually stole all of David Bowie's equipment once.
Oh,
really?
And they used it. Yeah, that was like the equipment they used for a long time.
Well, he's got stories. I guarantee I could get him up, but he's laying down in the air-conditioned bedroom right now. We've had, our air conditioner went out 2 days ago, wouldn't you know? So now we've got...
Oh, wow.
Yeah, can you imagine?
Yeah, my brother was going to come to my house to do this because his air conditioner was out.
Yeah.
And he said he would be what were you going to be, sluggish?
Oh.
You would sound like you weren't interested or something.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. No, like when I get really hot, I'm unanimated.
Likewise, I would have canceled for sure.
Yeah,
but we got it working. Here, you got it working.
Yeah. It was just a bad capacitor.
Yeah.
But this is the second season of trying to kick on the AC.
It's
where
awful.
It didn't kick on, so we're gonna
most remarkably humid. Talk about paranormal. This is a paranormally humid summer.
It is already. I think somebody's got their the pedal pushed on harp or something. I swear they made it rain on our Memorial Day just so we wouldn't open the beaches in Jersey. But that's just another another episode. But anyhow, I wanted to. I really wanted to pick your brains on some things, and I thought, gosh, I don't know. I know some of Joey's stories, some of the things, some that he's paranormal, supernatural, whatever, uncanny, whatever, can't explain. But I thought this would be fun. If you guys are game, we can do a little, we can try this. I wanted to do a little paranormal, supernatural word association with you guys. And I thought that would be a really cool way to spark some thoughts and some ideas, maybe stories or experiences that you might have. But I need you sitting close to Joey within where you can reach him if you have to. Perhaps use something sharp. If he starts going on a long thing, I want you to pinch him so he'll stop and hold it, because what I'd like to do is I'll just name these things. You can say one thing or say a sentence, and if it's something you've had an experience or a story about, I'm going to put a check mark back, then we'll go back and revisit the ones that you are familiar with or you'd like to talk about or have a theory on or an idea about? How's that sound?
I think I get it.
Okay.
So I'll be going on a thing I'll be on a rant, and then my brother will stop me and
pinch you, or poke you with something sharp. Mm-hmm.
Yep, and then you'll take a note, and then we'll get back to it later.
Exactly, and if you want, this is entirely optional. You can pinch him again if you want. But that's I'm gonna leave that. I'm not getting involved in the brother thing. You don't have to explain it to me.
Let's punch. I don't like being pinched.
That's fine.
I'm not a pincher either. I
punch
could
is
just
fine.
Give him a stare.
We'll play word association. All right,
or a tap.
Yeah.
We can actually play.
Let's do the tap.
Yeah,
that's
we just
fine.
Practice the tap. It seems to be working.
Is that going to work? Is that just get him back and focused? Because we're just going to go to the next word, and then we'll just do a little. This will be fun. Okay. We'll call it Paranormal Word Association Punch Bug if you want. Just pop them in the arm or something. Because I know, if I say something like, whatever, shadow person. It's like, I got a story about that. And then you're going to tell the story. And I don't want you to do that. I want you to hold. And then we'll go back. And that way we'll have a really nice, juicy episode of, a whole bunch of different things, I think. So anyway, are you ready? At your ready. Okay.
Yeah. Well, who's going first?
Okay. Who's older?
I am.
I thought you should go first.
Josh first.
You should go first.
Josh first. Okay. So you can give me a word or a sentence, and then we'll pull back and we'll go to Joey, and then we'll see whether it's check mark worthy or not. Okay. Okay. Here we go. Time slips.
Man, I believe in them.
Okay.
That's about all I can say. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Time slips. I've definitely thought that's happened to me before.
Okay. Check mark.
And I can't remember what happened, but it was something like you're hanging out with everybody. And I'm not talking like a medieval time slip or an Old West time slip or anything like that.
Should I slap Joe?
Yes. It's punch time. Punch him in the arm. I got a check mark.
Yeah, we're collecting thoughts.
Do you see?
Thoughts, right.
We're collecting thoughts for our grab bag. Okay. So did you punch him in the arm?
I'll catch on. Just let my brother go, and then we'll. Yeah.
All right.
Well, it's funny though. I just do want to mention that if we do want to come back to time slips, the one thing I want to mention is that you could take a note on, or I could too. But
then I hit you.
Before I get a chance. No, but
I'll catch on.
We're not getting through this episode, folks. Okay. Yeah,
no, this is a really good idea.
I gave that one.
I just don't get it yet.
Yeah, but
I'm interested. I think this is good. It's going to be good.
So there's a if you could just jot down the note in association with time slips.
Okay.
Dead end road in California.
Got
and
you. Absolutely, it's done.
Okay.
It's in red ink, so we're good. All right, ready? Here comes another one. All right. Make a fist, Josh. Black-eyed kids.
Oh man. They just terrify me.
Okay.
That's all I have to say on that.
Joey.
Joe?
Yeah, I would say the same thing. That's what I fear the most that I've never seen. But if I ever saw one, I mean, oh boy.
Okay. Next.
Yep.
UFO abduction.
Ooh. I met a guy at a bar once that had a brother that was repeatedly abducted. So that's so I'm just talking about topics that we can talk about later, right?
Yeah,
Okay.
And for me on the same subject, I do have this weird, screwed up mental, maybe you could even call it a time slip, associated where I think I may have been abducted.
Okay. 2 check marks.
So I don't have to hit him.
No.
He's on his own.
Yeah.
Okay, all right.
No, he's good. We're all good.
I'm really bad at games. It takes me a while.
No, it's okay. We're good.
I think this is a good idea.
Okay.
Good segment.
Okay, take a drink. You both got that one. You can both have a drink. Okay.
Oh, good.
All right, good. All right, sweet.
Okay. Residual hauntings.
Residual. Haunting.
The password is residual.
So, as in hauntings themselves are residual,
it could be anything.
Memories?
Could be anything.
Oh, okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I think I have an understanding of it from I listened to a similar podcast called Mysterious Universe.
Nice.
And I think I'm familiar with the subject.
Okay.
And I could probably talk about it.
And I would say on that one, I would say Old Man with Glasses in Portland. There was a ghost that a lot of people saw, so we can talk about that.
Okay, good.
Cool.
Double check mark. This is going to be a 2-part episode, folks. Okay. The next word is portal. Portals.
Portal.
Portals.
Plural?
Portal
Portals.
or portals. More than one or just one. Nevertheless, a portal.
That could bring me back to the dead end story.
Okay. Check mark.
In interest of time, I cannot think of anything about portal. That draws a blank for me.
We have our first paranormal supernatural word with only one check mark. Moving on. Moving on. Rakes. Not the kind you with leaves on your lawn, but the creature called the rake.
I've got nothing on the rake. You might have to teach us on that one.
If we weren't using my phone right now to do this call, I'd be looking that up right now.
Okay. Yeah. Well, Deborah, can you write down the word rake?
Yeah, I'm going to do it right now.
And you guys can look at pictures later.
I was like, we have a Deborah too.
Okay, very nice. We're never getting through this. Thank you, and good night, everybody. Okay, here we go. Here's the next one. Here we go. The password is extra dimensional. Extra dimensional.
Oh. Everything is it?
Yeah.
Well, yeah. I just wrote something about. Go ahead, Josh.
I have a recent meditative experience where I sometimes I'll smoke a little pot before I meditate. Sometimes I won't, and I can't remember. I kind of use the two because one is like
it's legal.
It's legal, and it's. I use it as training wheels to help me, and sometimes I do it to practice writing without. So
you had kind of like well, we don't want to give it away, but you had kind of like maybe a lucid experience of some sort, maybe extra dimensional. Okay, check mark.
It's very profound to me anyway. The extra dimensional component of what I've recently experienced.
And mine is just I always think about going to the extra dimension where Kurt Cobain's still alive to see what music would be like now.
Okay.
I think about that all the time.
Okay, there you go. Okay, double check marks. Okay. Here's one, short and sweet. Orbs.
Oh, yeah. Just saw one last summer.
Did you?
Mm, yeah.
Wow. I haven't seen one recently, but as you may have heard on recent podcasts of Joe's, I had some pretty profound viewings.
It might be where all of our interest in all of this comes from, is that thing that happened back then.
Could be.
Yeah, could be.
Okay, good. Double check mark. Bigfoot. I feel like I'm playing password.
When I think of Bigfoot, I think of two things.
Okay.
I think of I think of a very interesting episode of like a very serious, profound interview that I heard rebroadcast on Mysterious Universe.
Nice.
And I also think of a comedy routine from Kids in the Hall.
Oh yeah, wonderful.
Crates of Bigfoots.
Very good.
Crates of Bigfoot.
Three thumb Jake. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Me, when it comes to Bigfoot, all I know is that we live in the Bridgewater Triangle. Well, Josh doesn't. Well, he lives on the outskirts, but the Bridgewater Triangle is a paranormal, epicenter, what have you. And they have seen them here, and I've been wanting to go into the deepest, darkest recesses of the Bridgewater Triangle on a canoe or something, and for a few days in complete silence with cameras.
Nice.
So, and lots of mosquitoes.
Okay, so we have double. Yeah, we have double on Bigfoot. Okay, here we go. Are you ready? So double check mark. Take a drink. Are you done drinking?
Oh yeah, we're ready.
Okay.
Oh yeah.
Ready to go.
Men in Black. Men in Black, not the movie, the actual.
Right. I could talk a little bit about the first time I became familiar with them, and it was from a children's book in a Christian bookstore in Idaho.
Wow, that sounds like a story. Joey, how about you?
Oh, I'm trying.
Okay.
Certainly interest.
It's interesting.
That's funny. I'm gonna lose this one because there might be two that I don't get triggered.
Don't think of it as
they're micro.
No, there's no win or loss. There's no
micro triggers.
Okay.
And for some reason, Men in Black don't trigger me. I'm very interested in the subject, but I don't have any personal connection to any Men in Black thing except just really feeling like that movie made fun of it. You know?
Yes. Yeah. I can tell you propaganda. I'm going to go ahead and mention it now. Gosh, what's the name of it? Oh, gosh. Every time I try to think of the name of a movie, it swims away like I'm in a dark ocean, and I almost had it. We'll come back to that, but I just saw a wonderful movie. It was like a B movie, but man, it was fantastic. Both of you would truly dig this movie.
Okay.
And I can't remember the name, so there it goes. It'll come back.
Well, yeah, you'll think of it. But
it'll come up.
I actually just thought of Indrid Cold would come to mind because he was one of the weirdest Men in Black, if a Men in Black at all. You know, Indrid Cold from the Mothman.
Yeah, the Mothman. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. They're just freaky. You know, and if they're played well in a movie, but you often have to think of these things in the movie because we've become very desensitized. And again, here I'm breaking my own rule and I'm kind of going off, but I want to say this. We've become very desensitized in paranormal, supernatural, any kind of movie. And you just have to take yourself and put yourself back in that situation. You know, knock at your door, you open the door, and these guys are standing there, and they're talking like they're, speaking like they are and everything. That's a profound experience. But when you're watching it on a film, they have to hit the creep factor on all levels to get you a little bit, So it's any of these things.
I don't know what that movie was about, the Mothman Prophecy. I have no idea what that movie was supposed to be about at all.
I wasn't
have no idea what the point was because it was definitely not about the Mothman.
No. I wasn't really digging it. I really wanted to like it, and I couldn't get there. It was just one of those. I think I even saw it twice, and it's like going to an art gallery and looking at the paintings where everybody's standing around and they're going, "Oh, look at the depth of the thing with the stuff," and I'm like, "No, it's a dot with some splatters on it." I'm sorry, it's not. I'm not getting it. I'm not going to say I get it just to be part of the crowd. I'm going to tell you this is garbage. Yeah,
they turned what could have been a really interesting movie into an art film.
It took a hard left. Yeah, it took a hard left, much like was it Charlie and the Chocolate Factory? The original where they're going down. They start getting in the tunnel, the scene. It's like, man, that movie took a hard left. It just went from.
Oh yeah, I love that movie.
I do too. The original, I love the original.
I love how creepy it is.
Yeah,
it's just too. I love how creepy. I actually just talked to Gene Wilder. Well, I didn't talk to Gene Wilder, but I've been watching a lot of Gene Wilder interviews.
That would be a story for tonight. I'm telling you, if you did.
Absolutely. Well, I wish I had.
See if we can't dial him up. That would be great.
Sorry. I'll try that for next time.
Okay, here's one. Now, Josh, make a fist. Get ready. You're going to have to do it. You're going to have to punch Joey on this one. Reincarnation.
Oh, I mean,
yeah, we've got a couple of stories on that. We each do.
Double check.
I think that's
Civil War.
Yep.
Yeah, Civil War.
Oh yeah, boy, we're gonna talk. Okay, here comes a fun one. Okay, Chupacabra.
Sucker of goats.
Yeah, goat sucker. I don't have anything on Chupacabra.
I firmly do not believe in Chupacabra.
Okay.
I have evidence to prove it doesn't exist. No, I'm just kidding. But that would be interesting, wouldn't it? If I was just so adamant about, I know they're fake.
Well,
I know it's a conspiracy.
How can you prove
it's Richard Nixon in a goat costume?
Disproving something that's been spoken of for a long time.
I can prove
God doesn't exist right now.
All right.
The thing is like when any cryptid, I've got this thing about cryptids. Cryptids are just like, I don't know. We'll save it, or I'll have to punch myself in the arm. Okay. So, now here, this one's a little long, but it depends on how you feel about it. And my heart kind of really is wrapped around this one. So I gave it a long title just to not leave anybody out. Earthbound spirits or ghosts. Earthbound spirits and or ghosts.
What's the difference between that and residual haunt?
We'll get to that. We'll get to that.
Okay. Well,
this is kind of my wheelhouse, Joe.
Disembodied What was it again?
No, just so earthbound spirit.
Earthbound
Yeah.
spirit.
Human.
Yeah, that could be a lot of things.
Yeah.
Like every time you don't die in a car accident.
Yeah.
Well,
Or you magically go through
okay.
every tree and you don't hit anything. That kind of thing.
Yeah.
Like every accident I've ever had, never gotten hurt.
so it's either, like, do you have a story about ghosts, or, how do you feel about ghosts? You want to talk a little bit about, or, have a story?
Well, disembodied spirits. I mean, all kinds.
I have some theories about what causes ghosts
So
that we
that's
could talk
wonderful.
about.
Check mark. And Joe,
Okay.
you've got something you can say on ghosts.
I would say,
Okay.
yeah. Especially
Here is
the way
the
you phrased
bonus. Okay, I'm gonna give you the bonus word.
Okay.
And if you've never heard of this, I would like to, let this be the night that you hear from it, and I'll tell you about it. Okay. But it's kind of out of left field.
Okay.
Soul Reaper. Soul Reaper. And I don't mean the Reaper.
The Grim Reaper, right.
I don't mean the Grim Reaper. I mean
Right.
Soul Reaper.
Yeah.
Okay.
I have nothing about that. That's
Well, I'd never heard of it.
but I could posit a guess as to.
I could posit a guess, and I don't like it.
Yeah, I don't like it either.
Sounds kind of.
Sounds.
I don't like the implications.
Yeah, but I could imagine there are some individuals, based on what I'm assuming a Soul Reaper is, or even the Soul Reaper might be, that would want to be reaped by. There are many people that.
We'd have to define what a soul is too at some point.
Yeah. That's
It's
true.
certainly a topic worth discussing. I'm open to discussing it.
All right. Okay, well, there you go. We got through that. That's what I had. I mean, I could have gone, many, many more, but that's my way of saying, okay, we're walking through, you imagine yourself going through this gate, and we're just all walking and taking this little journey. And usually my guest will walk me, or I'll walk my guest, or we're all three of us are just kind of walking together and having a convo. And now we've got subjects and we can base ourselves on. So I'd like to, go to our first double check mark and take you back to TimeSlips. And I'll open with a little thought of what I think, because again, in these subjects, I always say, very rarely do I say I know. I really feel that there's no experts. I mean, you can be an expert on a certain part of this, but all supernatural, all paranormal, all everything is so grandiose. And to me, the bullseye keeps moving. Usually when you find out something, you have more questions than you have answers. So this is great. We can just talk about this and throw out some things, and we'll just jump through subjects. Or if we go off on a tangent, we'll try to come back and, we'll just do whatever. But TimeSlips, I often bring up the two movies that I really dig a lot. It's becoming, whether you want to say time travel might be involved in this, but I'm really focusing more on, have you ever heard of the one with the Versailles that happened in Versailles?
Yeah.
And,
I have heard that one.
Oh my, and it's so interesting because if you really get into it, not the shortened versions that you might see on Wikipedia or something else, but really delve into that whole experience that those ladies had. One lady might have seen the peasants on the side of the road, but the other one did not. She actually interacted with them, and the other lady was kind of not even noticing that she was doing it. I mean, there were so many different layers into that, from seeing Marie Antoinette painting in the little courtyard there, to servants going about their day. And it actually
they were
seemed to
in Versailles
last.
too, right?
Yes.
The ladies were in Versailles.
Yes. And it seemed to last a little bit longer than most people will have you believe. And then you've got several different stories that are very similar to a movie that I saw once as a kid, which really got me interested in this. It was called Somewhere in Time with Christopher Reeves, the original Superman. And he just goes to visit this little island. I forget the name of the island, but it's like an island that it was a big resort back in the day, very Victorian times. And he slips back in time and meets the lady he keeps seeing in the portrait. And it was so interesting. He kept stumbling back out. I don't know what they were trying to portray in the movie, but it was like he had really no control over it, almost like a time travel portal kind of thing. But I thought it was so interesting that when he deliberately tried to go back. He had to have all the clothes on from that time. He couldn't have anything that on or about him or use anything, even I think it was like down to the soap and the aftershave, had to be of that time. And everything was working out great until he put his hand in the pocket and pulled out a penny from his time, and he was zapped right back in time again. So what do you guys think about the time slips? Isn't that interesting? I mean, there's so many things.
Yeah, well, that's interesting because this morning I finally got my air conditioner working. So I was finally sleeping. So I woke up and then I was like, well, I think I'm going to go back to sleep. This is so great. And I was in one of those hypnagogic or hypnopompic situations where I was going in and out of dreams somewhat lucidly. And I kept going in and out of them almost as if like, I'm literally just choosing which dimension I want to be in. And it wasn't like the most incredibly concise. I mean, it wasn't like super, super vivid, but it was definitely this feeling of going from one space to another, like one dimension to another. And I imagine that, you have all different spectrum of realities you can experience with your consciousness. And I kind of felt like I was just going in and out because, we're into a reality where there might have been actual entities that would have seen me coming into that world and then out of it again,
Wow.
Yeah.
So I feel like you can be awake and something can pull you into another place. Yeah. And the time difference might be such that, you could be literally walking with somebody and then you could, for you could be in a different time for some reason. I don't know what. I mean, it could just be for fun. Yeah. Some entity could be just trying to teach you something. It could just be trying to show you that consciousness isn't just, ceases to be when you're dead or what, it could be people it could be all kinds of things, but it just that moment today you were saying that it just sounds exactly like the experience I had this morning where, just.
Yeah, I think, you were talking about, so there's like, you had two topics that I think could be potentially actually related to one another. When it comes to, like time slips, and then multi-dimensional, what was the exact term?
I think
the
it
keyword
was
that you get?
extra dimensional. Yeah. So extra dimensional. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I think, we tend to think of time as an additional dimension, at least, in, relativistic theory. And so I think, I would imagine that the interesting thing about the multidimensional way of looking at, or extra dimensional way of looking at the world, is, if it's true, and I'm going to say that it is, that it could potentially account for all of the paranormal things that you listed. And so, to me, time slips, I think maybe, and not to jump ahead at all, because I've already done that, but not to do it again. But, in terms of residual hauntings, I feel like a residual haunting could be related to a time slip, but it's not a full puncture through the film of reality.
Oh, yes.
And so you've got, you either, like, a time slip is where you literally cross time. And, but I think really it's probably just a more vivid version of residual hauntings, personally. That's
sure.
It's absolutely possible. Yeah. Interesting. I think so. You've reminded me of so many things. Just before, hang on one second, Joe. I just want to tell you this. This one might kind of pull together everything you just said, Josh, and you too, Joey. There is, now let's just take for granted that some of the things we might see on TV might have a hint of truth to them. So let's just assume that it's possible. But there is in fact, I think in my first episode, Truly Ghostly, I list off all the different types of ghosts or hauntings or type things, and then give at least two of what I believe are true accounts as an example. So it's all these really cool ghost stories in little categories, if you can put them in categories. So one of the ones that was my favorite, and I'm going back to one of the paranormal shows that was very famous, for a time, and that was Ghost Hunters. And it was towards the beginning.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, toward the beginning. And that really did open up a lot of things. Say what you will about different things, producers getting involved, and we could go off on a whole tangent here. But let's just assume that a part of this is true, and I'll tell you why I believe it's true. They were getting EVPs. Okay, they are in a hotel. In this hotel, I believe it's in Washington, and it's Washington State. I could be wrong on that. So listeners, put it in the comments or the chats if I get it wrong. But just for interest of time, it was a hotel that this princess from another country used to stay in. And she was very particular, one of these highbrow princesses back in, like I said, Victorianish times. And she used to bring her own bed with her, and she'd stay the whole summer. It was, her summer place and all that. Okay. It was very famous that she stayed there. She did not die there, but she was there for years. And they were trying to get EVPs. Now, you've got your two different groups, okay, doing EVPs. And what I mean by that and how they were doing it was they had the recorder running, and they would ask questions and then not stop the recorder, let it roll, and just talk amongst themselves and then continue to ask questions. Later on in the discovery, I believe it was Grant was asking, is anybody here? Can you hear us? They'd hear like a little bang or a creak or something. They didn't pay much attention to it. In the playback on the tape was a woman saying, "Who's there? Of course I'm here. Who are you? What are you doing? Where are you?" This whole conversation that they could not hear till the playback was this woman trying to figure out who they were. She could hear them but not see them. They could not hear her till the tape played back. Now, why I think it's real is because another team went in there, and this one was Steve Gonzalez and somebody else, I believe Tango. Anyway, they're in there later on, same room, did the same thing happened, but these, Goombas are talking so much about themselves. They're talking back and forth to themselves. I just wanted to shake them because they know better, You if you're going to ask, at least give time for the answer. Okay.
Right. Yeah, I mean, so
and leave some blank tape.
So they were having a conversation, asking questions, and then when they listened back, they turn up the volume really loud and listen. Right? That's kind of what they were doing.
Yeah. But see, they're talking and playing around and slap fighting over the whole EVP they got. So they missed so much of it because they stepped all over it, and that's why I call them Goombas.
Yeah. Oh yeah, no, that makes sense.
Because that's like the thing that every paranormal investigator that worth their salt is going to say, "Oh my gosh, you got the best EVP and you messed it all up," And they tried
Which
to pull
is why
it
when
out.
I go hunting for Bigfoot, I want to
be very
silence,
quiet.
at least
Exactly.
for part of the day.
But that was the whole thing. Now, was that a time slip? Was she in another time or a parallel universe, hearing them? Couldn't see them, and she's saying
I would
stuff
say
crazy, right? So
it's kind of like what my brother is saying. It's a minor time slip,
right?
Yeah, or a faint or a time. Well, because there's the theory that everything that ever happened, could happen, or did happen is all happening all the time, and so And so there is no real timeline.
Right.
It's, all we're really doing is discarding alternative choices all the time. And that's what creates the perception of time. And so what we could be, you could be tuning into, any time period.
Isn't it crazy? I know. It's wild.
And so what you could be doing is you could literally be, if we were to extend that theory a little bit further, you could say that that you could in theory actually ask questions, EVP questions of yourself in an alternative timeline or past life or what have you, and because all times are theoretically present in some philosophies, and so. I would imagine it would be pretty terrifying being the recipient of the question on the other side, because you would need to be, you'd probably be sensitive to that kind of thing anyway. And it kind of, I mean, one of the things, yeah, I mean, I don't want to, I guess I'm checking myself because I still feel like I'm in the middle of the game of the wordplay, but, but, and so I'm trying not to overextend
No, I think
how
it's
far
wonderful.
I take anything.
No, go ahead.
So, well, because, this again, I mean, what's so interesting about all the words in the wordplay part is how many of them I believe are very much interconnected.
Oh,
right?
I agree. 100% I agree.
So yeah, like, well, like reincarnation, for example, my earliest memory, is in a padded cell, which is really weird. Right. And my biggest fear, is, and one of the reasons why, you know, I'm into meditation is because after my singular mushroom trip years ago, what plagued my experience and why it was a bad trip and why it was the only trip was because that fear of my earliest memory, that memory precedes. So I remember being in a padded cell in immovable. So I assume I was probably in a straitjacket or something. And it was a white room. So I assume it's a padded cell. But I remember what's really weird is I remember my uncle, my mother's brother, being there. And I remember, and so it could all be just twisted versions of remembering my early childhood.
Right.
But because of the memories that I have after that, I doubt it. I feel like I'm remembering before I was born.
What's really interesting is that whenever I hear you talk about that experience, it's as if you have so many unique accounts from that experience, you know, because we've talked about all kinds. It was a very long and drawn out experience, I think. I saw a lot of things.
I saw a lot of things.
Yeah, because I'd never heard that portion of it.
Well, so in that early memory, I mean, granted, there's a lot of science trying to figure out how well the human memory even works, right? Which again could play into all of the stuff that we're talking about. Mm-hmm. But that fear, I remember that memory better than most of my younger age memories, but it precedes. You know, at first I thought, oh, maybe that was just I was still in my crib and I just have a flash memory of it, and I feel like I was in a cell. But the fact that I remember my uncle, maybe it was just an early childhood memory, and maybe my immobility is because I was a child and I was immobile and I happened to be in a white room. And it wasn't a padded cell with me in a straitjacket. I don't know, but for some reason, when I went through the mushroom trip, I was terrified that I was actually certifiably insane, and that
it's not funny.
It's not funny. It's I don't know why this sounds funny. But I get it, because I think we've all kind of been there in a lot of ways. I mean, this could open up many thoughts, and I know you guys have a great reincarnation story, but so many people that I've had on the show and spoken to throughout my life, because I've been looking into this. I mean, let's face it, 50 years. We're going on 50 years now. And you say actively, as a paranormal researcher, no, looking for answers, because I was having experiences very young, and you seek answers like, what is this? What's happening here? That kind of seeking. And I'm no closer to any solid answers. I mean, it's just the way this subject goes. But if you think about young children who have memories of, say, going down in a World War II airplane, and then have able to tell you what the inside looks like and what your name was, and things that happened, and I went down and it was burning and we all drowned or something, and then going back and finding those things actually existed and that person actually existed, and reincarnation thoughts from children, often once they get it all talked out and then realize, okay, I'm this person now. I'm not, Bob Jones anymore. I'm Pete, and this is my life now, and I'm cool with it. They usually grow past it. It's not like they forget, but they move through it. And I'm a firm believer in reincarnation, multiple reincarnation stories, and it's very possible you do have a memory of something like that. And just because your uncle was there, I'm also a believer, as I sit right now with the information I have now, I would say I have more information, to assume that it does exist than not. And,
I would say that reincarnation with it's hard to reconcile the meaning of what life is. I mean, it's hard to know what it is no matter how hard you think about it, like why and all that kind of stuff. But without reincarnation, I mean, without that piece of the puzzle, life does not make sense, because if the old model of you go to heaven or hell makes no sense, because you just don't get enough of a chance in one lifetime to prove anything.
Right. I agree.
Right. And circumstances like can make or break you in 100%. Your life. So I would say that in order to reconcile any meaning out of existence, I would say there has to be reincarnation. Right.
I love the way you put that. Because this one and done just doesn't make any sense for me either. I really think that I kind of believe, for lack of a better term, like this is, I still say this is like a prison planet. I once had, this is really I don't know how you guys are going to react to this, but it was profound for me. I have a lot of very close friends that are very gifted, more gifted. I have small abilities. I think we all do. But, very well honed their abilities, and each one are just magical people, I think. But she once told me, she says, to the other side, now whatever you want to say the other side is, okay? And she's calling ascended beings. She's like ethereal. She's talking spirit guides. She's talking our higher self. She's talking all that. And we were talking about groups. Like often we have soul groups, and we all kind of come back and like, so that's why I was saying if your uncle was there, it doesn't mean you might have seen him as your uncle, but he was really like your mom at the time, or, a nurse that, you got close to, or whatever. We all tend to come into each other's lives and play little parts, and like, okay, now I'm going to be, the drunk dad who doesn't pay any attention to you, and you get to be the kid, that kind of stuff. You know what I mean? Just to learn, so we can ascend on a higher vibration, our being ourself, whatever.
We become supra or like macro organisms as a group of individuals.
Yeah.
So like I think about this a lot. Like I interviewed a guy a while back who had a show called it's not on my show now. I'm gonna post it soon. I still have the interview in pieces, but he talks about that, and he talks about all this stuff. He kind of tried to sum it up in his own book. Called, My Big Toe or something like that, like My Big Theory of Everything. And anyway, he talks about how, we like if we've lived enough times, because there's new people and there's people that have been around a lot of times, and you do build these family bonds that are like like a super family, that and so and probably super enemies too. But if it's your I asked him, I said, so if we've been reincarnated, like, I don't know, let's say 10,000 times. He said, well, it's probably a lot more than that, but okay, 10,000. So, I mean, so people that have been around the block a lot, like, probably us, because we're thinking about this kind of stuff or whatever, we probably have like pretty long pretty substantial connections with a lot of different people. And I feel like what the ancient Egyptians did with all their sort of like, because their rituals were sort of like magic spells, the way they buried people and everything like that. I feel like they were kind of setting up an afterlife so that when you die, you're not just in some like primordial stew of consciousness.
Right.
So when you pass on, there's actually like a waiting room there, and people, like trying to consciously set it up while they're alive so that when they die, they have like a place to go.
Yeah.
And that, I don't know. So I feel
there's
like all of that
of religions,
sort of
religions or cultures and things like that do the very same. And you know what?
Yeah.
It makes sense to me. And I think, isn't that what we're kind of sort of doing now, just talking about this, and the whole burst of, like this isn't the first time that spiritualism or supernatural, any of that's had its, rise. I mean, it goes up and it comes down. It goes up and it comes down. And there's always these seekers of answers. We want to know, what's going on. This isn't just it. And like I was saying, that one medium, actually, she's a psychic medium. So she told me, she said, those on the other side that are kind of with us, because she's going through the whole thing where our soul goes through, and basically she's telling me about the thing where like you're kind of checking everything off. It's like, yeah, I'll do that and give me one of those and I'll take that too, because we're so brave over there. We kind of clicked into the big picture. All right, I'll go back. And, I'm going to pick that mom and that dad, that kind of thing. And I'm going to go through these things on my journey. And then she said, automatically, because this is not the only place you can reincarnate to.
Oh, yeah.
If we choose here, we're almost automatically heroes, because this is such a young planet, such a young dimension. We still have wars here. We still hurt each other here. We still kill each other here. We're such a young
I got a question
planet.
for you then.
Go ahead.
Where, like, if you could imagine, because it's anything within your capability of imagination. That's how many different places you could go. But you hear like a lot of people want to go to the dolphin planet, where it's just a planet of all dolphins.
Oh, yeah.
So in my last life, I was a dolphin on a dolphin planet. So
cool.
I would say, what would you want to be? What kind of world would you want to reincarnate into if you wanted to take a break for a while?
I think I would like to go to a place where people were kinder to each other. Where
I think those exist. I think we're in one of those.
I do too.
We're here to help those bastards out. That's why we're here.
Well, yeah, and
here.
There's so much of that. With many people call this a prison planet. And look at what's happened yesterday. I mean, in order to, and I don't want to get political, but just in order to, there's such angst here, and there's such. I don't understand how people can stand by and take a video of somebody getting beaten by 5 people. I just don't belong in that. I'm like, help the person. What did they do even?
Yeah.
I just feel like so out of place sometimes. But then I know kind of sometimes why I'm here too, because I have this anger. This will throw you both off. You want to hear something really out of left field and wacky doodle?
Sure. Oh boy.
But I believe this. Okay, this is so personal, but my listeners know I just, no holds barred. I'm honest with people, and this is what happened. So all my life I've had this, like, I idle at like 75. I'm Scottish, Cherokee, and Lenape. Redhead, born in Jersey.
Wow.
Yeah. So I like idle at 75, but I try to mask that by coming in calm. But short fuse. No, I don't have a fuse. It's already lit and I'm just there. So I have to deal with this anger. So for about 3 years, I was going on. I talk to my spirit guides, whatever you want to call them. People call them angels. People call them all kind of stuff. My heart, whatever. I'm talking to my people. Guide me through this. I want to get it right this time. I don't want to do this again. I don't want to be angry. Why am I so angry? So somebody told me, look, you don't know this lady. She doesn't know you. Here's the number. Call her. Yada, yada. Let's see what we can do. And I had an energy cleansing. It was very cool. It was the first one of those I've ever been over a phone. So I'm going through it. And I remember trying to go back. Like you were saying, you going back to your childhood memories. I'm trying to remember, when did this all start? And I said, I can always remember being this way. I looked up my baby picture. I look like Ernest Borgnine. I don't know if you knew who that is.
Yeah, we do.
But I had like this scrunched up. You got one picture in the 60s, when you had a baby, and that's like snap, boom, that's it. Here you go. And
I think there's only one baby picture of me, actually.
Oh, that's it. Yeah. And I had double fists, and my face was all scrunched up. I was going to punch the nurse that was taking the picture. I mean, I was just, and every childhood picture, I'm looking at it. There's no, forced smile maybe, but I had this anger. So anyway, I get on the phone with her and we go through some stuff, and she says, hold on. She goes, I keep getting this one word, and I'm not saying anything. I think I said hello. She says, I'm getting this one word, anger, anger, anger. And I'm thinking, okay, she's picking that up because it's on the forefront of my mind. I'm quiet. She says, hold on a minute. She goes, that's what you have to get through in this life. You have to learn how to control that and just go past it. She goes, but wait a minute. She goes, I'm picking up something. She goes, it's not your anger. I said, what? She goes, it doesn't belong to you. And that's when I started talking. She says, it doesn't belong to you. This is not your anger.
Oh, the anger's not.
And I said, what do you mean it's not my anger? She threw me. I didn't know I could get thrown, but she threw me. And I said, what do you mean? She goes, hang on a minute. She says, don't say anything. She's pulling up. She's going, did your mother, when she was pregnant with you, was she going through anything? Was there any kind of trauma or something like that? And I said, whoa. And it just all hit me. The whole 9 months my mom was pregnant with me.
Yeah.
She found out there was some, how do I put it? My dad was extremely abusive, an alcoholic. He was a World War II soldier with bad shell shock, bad PTSD, and he tried to quiet it with alcohol. He was very violent.
A lot in that generation, for sure.
Yes.
Very common.
He beat up everybody in the house. I mean, there was so much trauma going on in that house, and it was haunted, and there was bad entities in the house that were feeding off of this and egging things on. And my mom's pregnant the whole time going through all of this with like 7 kids.
Good grief.
And all of this stuff going on, and there was even more. It goes deeper and deeper and deeper. Anything you can imagine, it probably happened. So I was just like, what? She goes, it's not your anger. You absorbed that from your mother. It's her anger.
Yeah. Well, okay.
What?
So you know how you can, when you're drinking, like some people drink, they get angry. Some people drink, they're in a better mood. I feel like when you drink and you get angry, it's because there is like an actual spiritual anger going on. And when you drink, you get happy. You notice that you're adding a chemical to your body. So a lot of your anger is chemical, right? Mm-hmm. So if you're being exposed to a lot of, I don't want to sound like an amateur biologist or whatever, but the peptides that your body be flooded with during stressful situations would be flooding right into the fetus as well. Uh-huh. Right. So all of that stress is going to, on a physical level, and I think physical and spiritual can't really be separated, but in a testable sort of physical way, your body, your mother's body is being flooded with all these peptides and all the stress hormones. And it
makes
physically
perfect sense.
Creating a capacity, like a physical brain capacity for that kind of anger to fight off the what's happening, to fight off the stress, to give you this capacity for anger to defend yourself.
Right. And just pure survival. Right? But then you think about it, and I say that story because I wonder how many people are walking around that have an anxiety issue or something. And it really, when somebody sits you down and says it doesn't belong to you, and then you have that energy taken off of you. When she did that, whether, and I often recommend, whatever works for you, Reiki, energy work, therapy, a mixture of all, whatever works for you. If you can go back to that and not blame the parent, but say, because you think about it, I used to listen when I was pregnant with my oldest, I used to listen to classical. I wanted him to love classical rock, good rock, old rock, 70s rock music and stuff. And I would listen to AC/DC and Jimi Hendrix and, just all kinds of a mix of different stuff. And they both grew up loving that. They had their own road as well, but they had an appreciation for it. So if they can absorb the love of music, why not absorb anger and hatred and fear and survival?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So,
I think you would on a spiritual and a physical level, you're literally building up a defense against the negativity and the abuse on a physical level, and creating a more aggressive personality just based on just a DNA level, and then obviously on a spiritual level because just you're conscious when you're in that state too. So
and how far does it go back? Because if you think about it. I spent a lot of time because I was working with vets, and I'm a vet myself. And I have.
You're a vet?
Yes, I am. And I had.
Oh wow.
veteran. I don't work on animals, but I do help animals too. On
Yeah,
both
yeah.
kinds.
So
On both kinds.
As I was saying, I was like, wait, I'm not sure which one I mean.
Yeah. Actually, kind of
Okay,
both
yeah, you're
with,
veteran,
but you know. But anyway, so anyhow, I had gone through this thing. It's a long story, but I got bit by 5 brown recluse spiders, and I went completely Native American and Chinese herbal. I went no Western medicine. I had a Western doctor who guided me through tests and then told me, okay, this is what's going to happen next, or this is what's wrong now. Then I'd go and I'd treat it naturally.
So you had a control
herbally.
group. That's pretty scientific. That's good. Like real science.
I had
not
to.
fake
They
science.
had better equipment than I had, and I had to know what was going to happen. But I decided to fight nature with nature, basically. So I went through this, and I went no pain pills, and it was the most excruciating pain I've ever been through in my life because it hyper-intensified, the venom hyper-intensifies your nerves. It's just like an added bonus. So anyway, I went through all of this. And because I believed very much in herbal and things like that, my tribe brought me in to kind of work with people with that. So anyway, I went through all this stuff, and you go in front of elders, and you get to wear certain feathers, and it's very cool. It's all the ceremonies are so wonderful, so meaningful.
That's cool.
They have so many deep things. Yeah, when you get called in front of elders, and a 95-year-old beautiful woman with just these beautiful deep wrinkles in her face and just so much wisdom in her eyes, very so fragile, but she's been through so much and she's earned it, and she hands you a turkey feather and she says, you are now allowed, you are cleared to wear a turkey feather, and I will tell you why. Because turkeys are they're very noble birds, and they, she explains all this about giving, and giving it of itself and things like this, and and then buzzard feathers. And I went, buzzard? Wow, that sounds weird. She goes, no, you don't understand. That's a very high honor, because a buzzard can take a negative and turn it to a positive, and that's what you did. So now you get to wear these feathers. So it's all very deep. But
wow, yeah,
the whole thing
cool.
is, I was brought in to speak to vets, because a lot of vets have a lot to do with traditional, stuff. It's very nomadic, so a lot of vets, go to that. But anyway, I was in there talking with them, and it was just a communication thing. It was like a talk therapy, and we were talking, and the stuff that you learn is absolutely amazing. But if we could go back to things like this one elder told me, she goes, well, of course you're doing that, because it's in your DNA. You have a DNA memory in your bloodline. Like, what? So, how far back does it go? So now you've got your lives that you've lived and your bloodline, but then I guess if you're in a soul group, that bloodline might stay the same. It gets crazy, but it makes so much sense at the same time.
Yeah, don't you think? I mean, I don't know if this is true. I'd have to really look at it, but it seems to me that wars happen in sort of a generational pattern. The First World War is separated by about 20 years, give or take. And so you have these generational generations of people that have to live with that trauma.
Yeah.
It's separated by a lot of years, where you get some families that don't. It's almost like kind of a really good thing that some families and whole generations go generation after generation skipping wars, whereas other ones have to actually suffer through wars. Yeah, where the men, generation after generation have fought in wars.
So interesting. So interesting. I mean, so many things that we just touched on there are so interesting. And like Josh says, so many of these things I've often said that bleed into the next. And that's why I get so funny when we're talking about ghosts and people ask me, can a ghost do this? Well, I don't know. First of all, is it a ghost? Is it the essence of what it used to be a human being? And just changed
what is a ghost?
If it's just changed, that, then what was the human being like? Now, what does the ghost know? What's its energy like? What does it learn to do? What does it want? What is its purpose? What does it see? Is it in its own little cage, like a vortex, like a tunnel vision, and it sees, what it's seeing, or does it see what there's so many questions.
I think that your dreams can be so vivid and so real that some of your dream characters can have their own consciousness,
Yeah.
So
yeah. And some
you
of
might
them
have
can
an
be
impression
visitating
left.
people. Some of them can
You
be
might have
visitation dreams.
like a trauma.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. We
No,
talk to each other.
no, I'm sorry.
Do you want me to ball up my fist?
Yes, no. But I'm just saying, some of them could be visitation dreams. We talk about that a lot here on this program, where somebody who's passed can connect with you during a dream state, because you're kind of almost, you're talking about having, traveling in different dimensions when you're asleep or when you're, meditating. And that's on the same idea of that, where they can kind of connect to you better, so they can come visit you. And we often say that I know when I have a visitation dream, and often many, many stories I've had about visitation dreams where a loved one comes back, usually less their earthly burdens, which is interesting. Because if they were limping, they no longer limp. If they were sick, they're no longer sick. They usually look younger and healthier and happier and more together. And they come during a dream, and it's usually a dream that you can almost, like, you can smell, you can taste, you can feel it, the colors are crisp and bright. It is different,
Oh yeah.
Well, it's funny. I'm probably jumping the tracks a little bit here, but what you just said reminded me of an experience, because I was racking my brain. I was like, have I had a dream experience where I've met with somebody who's passed? And the answer was no. I mean, I came up dry, but I remembered, and I think this is related, but in a different way. I had a singular bully in my life in junior high school, and it turns out all the way through high school, but I had avoided him for the first 3 years of high school. It wasn't until my senior year that I bumped into him again. But what was really interesting was after I bumped into him again in high school, his name was Ted Williams. I'm mentioning his name purely because he had the same name as a famous baseball player.
The famous tunnel.
And the famous tunnel.
The tunnel that buried Marilyn Monroe. I don't know.
No. Anyway, but I remember when I bumped into him again in high school in my senior year. Actually, it may have been my junior year, but because I remember I still had a cast on my leg from a snowboarding accident, and he pushed me down the stairs in the high school. While it was right after, no, my cast had finally come off, but my leg wasn't really strong yet.
What a jerk.
And it terrified me, as it would, because I at the time I wasn't, I'm still not very confrontational physically. I try to manage everything with my words and take it as far as I can go. And in any case, it was a traumatic, little brush up with this long-standing enemy of mine. But shortly after that experience, I had a dream, and it was one of the most vivid dreams I'd ever had. And it was kind of, and I don't know how, it was a dream, but it was a dream that where we were kind of that enemy of mine, that bully, and I were conversing before this life, and in some form. And he's like, and he basically told me, he's like, I'm headed into a situation where I'm going to have a terrible family, and I will very likely not be your friend this time around. Wow. And he said, so forgive me for it. Wow. And that was, and it was, and I was like, yeah, whatever. No, it's good, man. Don't worry about it. It was this thing where it was like, I'll deal with it. It's fine. And, and it was, I was like, I get it. And I wish you the best of luck. And he's like, Yeah, likewise. It was just this weird,
Wow.
Yeah, I remember you
kind of
telling
like
me
a
about that.
pre-Earth sort of a pre-current existence sort of. I mean, granted, at the time I was looking at it through the lens of a Mormon, where Mormons believe that our earthly experience is brief and the only physical experience that we have, where we have all of the chaos, right, of life. Where before that you live as a spirit in a pre-existence, and afterwards you kind of get judged and sent off to wherever you're going to live for eternity. And not something I embrace anymore, but I looked at that at the, with that lens at the time, and it changed everything. I mean,
Wow.
it changed my opinion of him, and it had me wonder, if like my brother, we could have, we may not all know each other in other lives. You know what I mean? And
some more than others, but possibly everybody knows everybody a little bit.
Yeah.
Wow.
And so it was. That's the closest thing I have to that sort
But
of
that's
thing.
so cool. That's so cool because, very much like many of my friends who have, they believe communicated with people who have passed on and are able to come back and give snippets. It doesn't seem like anybody's got the whole rule book, but they will give you snippets on, I often say, what have we learned from the dead about living, and most of the messages are very much like that. Like, okay, I'm going to come back and I'm going to have to pay, the bad guy role here. I'm going to be a jerk. I mean, I've had many stories of people who say that they've communicated with both the killer and the victim, and once they've gotten over there, they don't seem to be all hung up on it,
Right.
In some cases, because they're saying, okay, well, you don't understand because in another life I killed him, or I killed his mother, or I killed, and it's just so wild when you start digging deep into these things. Like, are we really here to learn all of that? Are we here to, just try to be the best human beings we can be with what we've been given, our hand of cards that we've been dealt, and try to learn to overcome each thing like that? But did you actually have a conversation in spirit form, whatever energy form, with this person? Like, look, I'm coming through, and we're going to have to, we're going to have some confrontation here, and I'm going to go ahead and apologize because I've heard that before. I've heard that about my very own family. We've already agreed that we were going to go through this. We've already agreed this was our journey. You were going to have to do this, and I'm going to have to sit here and watch you do it, and then I'm going to be there for you when you're ready to get up. And that seems to be the closest skeleton key to the door of this thing called life that I've ever heard. And what you just told me even solidifies it even more for me. That makes so much sense. So much sense. It's profound.
And talking of, oh, sorry, go ahead.
No,
sorry.
I was just saying it's profound. It's very profound. I love it.
Yeah, I think, and honestly, talking about this makes it kind of puts a spin on it that's kind of helps me realize, or helps me kind of open up other, what you said, skeleton key, and I think that's a good way to put it, because, you could look at it as, is there that space in between our lives where we do communicate? And I think definitely we do. And there's, because if you've meditated at all and gotten to like a state of samadhi, where kind of the physical form kind of dissolves a little bit, and or a lot, depending on how
it does every time we go to sleep too.
Yes,
exactly. But we tend to lose consciousness when that happens.
But we just forget what we saw.
Right. And I just feel like the more I try to explain it right now, it's slipping away. But there's definitely some truth to that, and I feel like sometimes what happens is when you turn that skeleton key and you feel things unlock, you feel the tumblers unlock in the chamber, your conscious mind that doesn't speak English grasps it, and you feel like you can put it into words, but you can't.
Right. Because it's non-linear.
It's right. Yeah, we don't have words to describe it.
I was just thinking this last night or 2 nights ago. I was praying, and I was, I've been really grateful for things lately, and not because I'm decided to be grateful. I just have been. I've just been happy about the way things are going, and I thought, like, when we communicate to each other, like I was praying, like, can I be somebody that unlocks ideas? Can I have a perspective that unlocks other people's perspective? So, like, cool. Everybody hears information all the time, and then like parables, and nothing makes any sense until it does actually make sense. Like something happens to you, and that parable that you heard when you were a kid suddenly clicks, where it actually makes sense. You understood it logically, but you didn't understand why it really mattered till an event happens. And so I feel like possibly, just in the course of this conversation, it's almost as if what we're here to do is unlock potential in each other through experience and through a whole spectrum of experience, from the very, very, very bad to the very, very good.
Absolutely. And it goes back to everything. Like, look at my situation with the anger.
Right.
What if, this was a trauma for me, because I'm like, look, I get it. I've been a soldier. I've sat for 3 days. Women we're way past the point of, learning that women or, people, whatever, can do whatever they want to do, but it still sounds odd for a woman to be sitting in the woods for 3 days with 13 mercenaries, and everything is, wow. It sounds odd, but you
should come on my show and we should talk about that.
Yeah.
That sounds like a good one.
Yeah, it may sound odd, but it also sounds kind of badass.
Yeah, well, it sounds like screenplay material.
It's like, you're not whiny, you're a soldier. You're a soldier. You're a brother.
Right.
I still call my brothers, and they, brother to soldiers mean so many different things. It doesn't have a gender, really. It's weird. But, it's very much like having your nickname, or you just call everybody by the last name or whatever. It's just such a camaraderie. But to be accepted by other soldiers that you did not fight alongside of, or even go through any kind of training with, or, a base, or, any kind of job training or whatever. And it's just amazing to go through that, and then to have them sit there, and this is going to make a point, but give me a second. Just sit there. So it's like, okay, now I'm sitting in front of you. Tell me everything you can't go home and tell your wife or your girlfriend or your son or your daughter or your parents, because I want you to get it out, And I'm sitting there and I'm communicating with them, and they're like, you don't understand the things I did. You don't understand. And I'm like, you don't understand. I love you. I love you even more. You're a soldier. I understand. Right. So we're doing that, and some, you're talking to a while, and it's like an hour, and some it's 3 hours, and, then it's the next one and the next one and the next one. And it's almost like, it's so weird. It's like, you guys are probably too young to remember. It was an old show. What was it? I think it was Night Gallery. And it was around the time the Twilight Zone was still on TV. So it was very that kind of thing. It always started out with a painting, and then you went into the painting and you had the story. This one was called The Soul Eater. No, excuse me. I correct myself. It was called The Sin Eater. And it was so weird. Oh, it was so weird, because it was this old village, like an old dark ages type village, okay? And there was this one guy who was like, okay, the guy, Grandpa's about to die, go get the Sin Eater. And the Sin Eater would come in, and I know this is going to it sounds silly, but it'll make sense. So the Sin Eater comes in, and it sits there, and it's just this big melodrama thing. And, the Grandpa's in bed, and everybody's crying, and you have to leave the room. And they take all the food. They have fruits and breads and everything else, and they put it on top of Grandpa on the bed. Then the Sin Eater comes through and sits there and prays over this man's soul and eats the food. And while he's eating the food, he's ceremonially eating all the sins that this person created in their lifetime, so that when they pass, they are sin-free. And
wow.
I know, it's crazy, right? And then at the end of this show, of course, Grandpa passes, but everybody's happy now because Grandpa's going to go to the, Happy Land or whatever, because he's, his spirit has been lifted and all the sin is, past and whatever. And the sin eater is like, oh my gosh, and he's just this poor guy, a vagrant that, like basically a homeless, whatever, villageless person. And he goes, but he's fed, but he's so weak because he's taken in all the bad off this guy. And then at the end of the show, this was just so profound for an 8-year-old to see. So at the end of the show, there's like this screaming going on, and you see this guy, the same guy, go in to a little shack or whatever, and the same ceremony happens again, and then this screaming happens, and this old woman walks out, and she's just pale, like she's seen a ghost, and she's just, oh my gosh, she's horrified, and it's like, what's the problem? He goes, well, the sin eater didn't realize that the person dying was also a sin eater. So now,
wow.
I know, right? Is that not a horror story or what? But the whole time I'm doing this, I'm thinking this is very much like, I don't know if people that you confess to or you talk your darkest to, if they sometimes feel like that, like almost like an empath, because I'm an empath, and you absorb people's feelings, and you have to know how to, like, what's yours, what's not. It's so hard sometimes. But I often feel like that is that what we're doing sometimes? Is we're taking, if you're taking grief off of somebody, are you also taking it into yourself? Very much like, not so much as profound as the sin eater would be. Mm-hmm. But you see where I'm going here? And that's kind of how I felt, when I'm doing this and I'm listening to these stories, and I'll never forget, and the trauma that these things cause our young people that have to go into these wars and do things. I often think about the Civil War. I mean, 16, 17-year-old kids, you get done marching, 200 or 300 miles, and you got to fight for 3 days, wearing wool in the mud, eating nasty worm-infested hardtack, and then you get up and you do it again. Yeah,
the bankers who started the war are
and you get up and do it again.
Old. They won't retire. Yeah. They just won't retire. Won't give the business to their son, and they're just meanwhile writing all the checks. All these people go off.
Horrible.
And have to do all these horrible things.
But do you see how that kind of come full circle as to, are we actually that and supposed to be that to each other? Yes, we're supposed to help each other along, but if you have a friend who is going through some kind of trauma and they just need to unburden themselves with it, they kind of almost hand it to you in some way. You might be able to handle it better, and because you're not emotionally attached to it and you didn't physically do it, and all that kind of stuff, it's not really yours, but you are kind of taking the burden from somebody like that. And then what do you do with it? Like the
Well, at the very least, you're carrying that understanding for the rest of your life. So you're learning something from it. So by feeling something, you're not necessarily feeling exactly what they're feeling, but by carrying some of the burden, you're getting a view into somebody's life without having to live it.
Right.
And so, that
and
you can carry that into how you
damage.
Treat other people.
And the damage
it makes you wonder how those things perpetuate. And I wonder, and I think you were headed this way earlier, if that's where the turmoil actually comes from, long term, right? So you had you carried the burden of your mom's fear and anger, and then as you grow, you as an empath, you start talking to these other soldiers, and you hear them out, and you lift that burden, in some form, to some degree, probably in some cases, probably very much, there's probably some people that have told you stories that you've done them a great service just because they've been able to talk about it.
And then have at
but
the end of that to look them in the eye and say, I love you. You're my brother.
Right.
That's the most
Yeah,
important part.
I think,
And mean it. And
Mhm.
mean it. That's the most important
Yeah.
part. But why can't we do that why can't everybody do that? Why can't we do that with the grocery clerk, that's having a bad day and we're just so upset because, we're in a hurry or whatever, or the guy that cuts us off, or do you see what I mean? Why does it always have to be something so big to put us on our butts to listen? Because it doesn't just happen with the living, it happens with the dead. Because if you've ever spent a night on a battlefield in Gettysburg or in Fredericksburg or Shiloh or, Trenton, or, you know what I'm saying, about Fort Monmouth, and you've sat there and you've had a conversation with a soldier who's now dead and is going through the same things, but they've been there for 200 years. And they're repeating it, and they're going through the pain, and they're going through So where does the kindness stop? Where does kindness from a human being to another human being, dead or alive? Do you see where I'm coming with that?
Yeah.
And that's why it upsets me so much when I see people doing a paranormal investigation, and they're provoking, and they're doing all this stuff just to get a reaction. When I'm going, you don't understand, that's a human being. That's why I loved Hans Holzer so much, because Hans Holzer would say, I've never been afraid of a ghost. They're just human beings in need of help. And that's how I've always felt about it, And I don't know how you guys feel about ghosts. I don't, Joey mentioned earlier about, well, before we mention, spirit, earthbound spirits, we'd have to kind of figure out what a soul is and everything else. But, we're here. And if we pass, and if we have an intelligent haunting or intelligent, and what I mean by intelligent is if you have a ghost who's reacting with you, and talking to you in real time, not just EVPs because like Josh said earlier, EVP could be you in the future. We could be haunting ourselves. The footsteps coming down the stairs could be us from yesterday or next week. Mm-hmm. We don't know. But if you have that in front of you and you can somehow communicate with that individual and explain to them, very much like I did with my friends were soldiers, and try to explain to them, you don't have to go through this anymore. You have free will. You don't have to stay here, That's an amazing thing. And I don't know how you guys feel about that. Where do you stand on ghosts? Have you ever seen a ghost or been in a haunted house or had an experience in that?
I have no personal experience. I have probably 100 different ghost stories that I was told over campfires as a Boy Scout.
Do you have one that stuck with you some way profoundly, that touched you in some way, that made you think?
Well, the one story that I've heard actually recently, I'm gonna pick up for a bit, but that I think really, that kind of sunk in as, yeah, that really happened. I mean, because a friend of mine that I met through my girlfriend. She's actually. She's been a friend of her family for a while, and the house she used to live in was haunted, but primarily the basement. Mm-hmm. And as a kid, I think every kid thinks every basement is haunted. Right.
Yeah.
But what was interesting was there was a I forget the name of the ghost, but there was at least one ghost in the house, and they had a name for him. They identified with the ghost as a male. But the most profound story that they share, just to kind of open conversations, is about how her husband one time went down there to get like a screwdriver or something like that, from the toolbox, and was drinking a beer, and he put the beer down, and he was about halfway through the beer, and this may sound totally silly, but I trust I trust this woman. I trust her husband. But he put the beer down and was rummaging through the toolbox to get the screwdriver or whatever it was. Maybe it was a hammer or whatever. And then when he got up, he didn't hear anything. But when he stood up with the tool he was looking for, the beer that he had been drinking was empty and crushed. The can was crushed. So,
Wow.
So it was, we could just call him Brad, I guess, the name of the ghost, because I can't remember the name they called him, but apparently finished his beer and crushed it for him. But
wow.
That's interesting.
So I don't have any personal experiences with ghosts, but I do believe that they're real. And I'm going to say this in terms of, I'm not necessarily convinced that, and it doesn't really matter, but I'm so caught up in the concept of how that relates to time slips and, multiverse sort of, divergent realities and so forth, that, I wonder if this ghost was, the ghost could have even been another version of him in the basement, getting the tool, and finishing the beer and crushing the beer when it was done. And, or it could have been somebody else living in the house. It could have been, it may not be somebody who's grounded or stuck to earth. It could literally just be someone occupying the same space in another dimension.
Did this guy have the habit of doing that? You know how like everybody's got a habit of like when you finish a beer, you do something, or if you finish a cigarette, you put it out a certain way or whatever. Did he have the habit of drinking the beer and crushing the can? The person, the human, the living person?
I would think so.
My guess is maybe.
Because I don't think it would have been that poignant if it wasn't, right?
Yeah, but I don't. Well, no, I'm saying. I guess I'm applying my theory of how this works on top of it, and I've never really asked Deb deeper questions about that.
That would be interesting to know, though. Like if he didn't
it would be
have
really
the
interesting.
habit.
I would love to. Yeah, it's something worth examining. At least to pursue that one theory.
Correct. Interesting.
Well, speaking of Deb, and I don't mean to go sideways again, but because it's all related, I think we can roll back to where we're headed at the moment pretty easily. But Deb's son, when we were talking about time slips and dimensional and portals, actually, one time. He brought up a circumstance where he was in California visiting a friend and was waiting for something. And so he decided to take a walk. I think they were going to all meet up later that night or something, and he had nothing to do. So he took a walk to the end of this road where it was a dead end, and he walked past the dead end into the desert. And because there was kind of like a beaten path there, like footpath, past the dead end. And he saw all kinds of stuff. Like there was a large building, like a government facility, sort of building, nondescript large building off the end. He didn't see any roads leading to it, which was odd because it just seemed like an odd place for such a building. This was about a quarter of a mile into the desert, and but he kept walking, and what ended up happening is really bizarre because he walked for what he said was about 45 minutes, and where he came out, the desert had kind of all kinds of shrubs and brush and stuff, and then eventually it was more like wooded area, and when he came out the other end, he was 40 miles from where he was supposed to be. Like he walked way past. Like somehow in 45 minutes he walked 40 miles.
Wow.
And the way he describes the government facility, he calls it a government facility, but he's not sure that it truly is or not. And so that's really weird, and there's a I had a similar experience when I was a kid. In my own dead end, Joe and I lived on a dead end street, and there was a path at the end of the road, and there was stuff in the woods that wasn't always there. Seamus and I, my friend, would go into the woods every summer and just look for stuff because there was just all kinds of weird stuff back there. It was a very short path that led to the next kind of perpendicular road. Like if the road literally went all the way through, it would meet at a T. And it does now. But at the time it didn't. And you know, there were a couple summers where there was an old, what we think was probably an old auto shop or like a gas station maybe, in the woods, where there was an old shed, there was pumps, there were
remember big rusty gears.
There was big rusty gears, and there was but it wasn't always there. There were times we would go back into the woods. It's not a very far distance, and we only would go to the right of the footpath. We never went to the left because it was just woods, and there wasn't any.
Oh yeah.
But
I'd say I wasn't even paying that much attention, but that same thing happened to me back there, like probably 5 years later.
Yeah. Like there's stuff that there would be like old rusted out cars, you know, some summers, and then
with overgrowth on them, like vines and stuff growing on them.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Like then they wouldn't be there the next time you went there.
You go there and then
you tell your friends about what you saw, and then you go back and it's not there.
You can't find it.
That's so strange. Yeah, that's very weird because I've never talked to my brother about that, but it's definitely happened to me in the exact same location.
Yeah, and so it makes me wonder. Well, one is that a time slip or is that a dimensional thing?
Wow.
And so there's, you know, or is it just crappy memories?
Well, real quick, I want to say we're so used to the way this reality works. It's so regular. You can set a watch to it. That's how regular it is.
Right.
True.
You build a watch, and the watch tells time. So whenever it behaves erratically, it's very, you know, confusing. But like, it's probably the same reality as your dreams. It's probably the same reality as the ghosts and everything. It's all the same reality, but you know, the main thing we're in right here is very stable. So it's as if you're in like a calm section of the sea, but occasionally a wave comes in, you know.
Right.
From a more turbulent area. I don't know. It's not the greatest
That's
metaphor.
wild. I actually had a similar experience, very similar. I was a child, probably between the ages of 8 and 10. And we had a house. It was here in New Jersey in a place called Oakhurst. And you'd walk out the back. The weirdest things happened in this house. And it wasn't in the house. It was nothing odd happened in the house. Very much like other houses I lived in. Everything happened outside of this house. And there was woods behind the house. And when you walked through the little path, as you say, we would come onto a dead end. So mine was backwards. I was the house on the other side of the dead end. So and I had a friend that was at the corner of what this dead end was. So we had worn a path, literally, through the little woods, the little wood line there. And it was, you know, maybe all of 40 yards of woods, you know. And then it would open to this dead end road, and I'd walk up the road and go to her house on the corner, and then we'd go from there. That was our routine, especially in the summer. And for school, I would always go through there to meet her at the bus stop. We go to her bus stop. So I saw my first UFO there. You know, what's a UFO? Unidentified flying object. That actually chased us. It wasn't a craft so much as it was a light, a saucer type light. Okay, I can describe it perfectly. If you've ever seen, they don't do it so much anymore, but spotlights, like we used to when I was a kid.
Holy crap!
Yeah, when
you
have.
This is really weird.
Is it weird?
Okay, keep going because like
okay.
It all
see if it
sounds so familiar. It's kind of terrifying.
Yeah, we were going to say, is she going to say spotlight?
Yeah.
No, really?
Yeah.
So.
Oh, yeah, I was making a spotlight gesture, and then you said it's like a spotlight.
Really? Yeah. Oh, wow, that's weird. So,
yeah, keep going. Sorry.
Well, we used to have, it was big in the late 60s, early 70s when a car place would have like a big sale, and they'd order all these great big, like almost like the World War II spotlights, which is, they would spot planes with. So that's what it looked like. But if you ever saw one of those where you didn't see the beam, you just saw the light that hit a group of clouds, and it would look like a light, like you would with a flashlight on a wall. That's what this looked like. And we're standing at the end of this, and she walked me halfway, I walked her halfway, whatever. And we were saying good night and talking all our girl stuff, whatever. And I look up, and there's this light. And I said, wow, that's weird, we a couple things back and forth, and she turns to look at it, and the doggone thing came like right above us, like from far away, what seemed like, past the end of the street over the town, came like right at us and above us, and then kept getting closer. And I'm looking at her, and she's looking at me, and she's just making faces, and I'm sure we're just making noises at this point. I don't even know. And just flight hit, and we start running. And the thing follows us, hovers above us, no sound, hovers above us, and is running. So when you look back, it's there. You're running for all you're worth, and your 10-year-old body will carry you and screaming, as girls will. Excuse me. And it's right behind us. And we're running through the trees. We're running on that path. And of course, that's when you hit all the vines and all the stuff. And it was insane. And we're just screaming at this point because it's coming through the trees. Much like you'd see a duck fly through the trees. If you ever watch a bird like go through the woods, but low. And it's doing that. And we cut through my backyard. We run in my back door, and we slam the door. Now, when this started, it had to be what we call dusk. Like the street lights hadn't come on yet. That time when, when we were kids back in my day, when the street lights came on, you better get your butt home. That was your time.
Right.
Right. And we used to just try to last a little longer to see the bats, because all the bats would come around the lights and stuff. That was so cool. So it was before then. When I got in that door with her, she followed me to my living room back door. My mom's sitting at the table and go, "You're so," and we're like, and we're leaned against the door with our butts on the floor, with our back against the door, going, "Oh, this Jay says there's a light and there's a such and such." She goes, "You are so late." And we had just said, we've got more time. We can stay out. She goes, I got a test tomorrow. And we decided to go early. So there's missing time there.
Yeah.
I can't explain that. And just like you said, those same woods would, if you went past her house, the woods continued. And we would go into those woods. And every time we'd go in, sometimes this big old broken down greenhouse out of nowhere would be there. And, it had you could go in the greenhouse and be lots of broken glass. There'd be things like people set up in there. There'd be your, I want to say complimentary stack of old Playboy magazines and stuff like that. All that stuff.
Wow, that is so weird.
People had been hanging out, and then you'd go the next week and tell kids about it, like this greenhouse, and you couldn't find the greenhouse.
Yeah, and you can't find the Playboys. That's so weird. I was just thinking, I was like, you're in the woods and you find like a dirty magazine, and then you go to show your friends and it's not there anymore. Right. That's so weird. I was just thinking that.
Were you really?
What a horrible thing to think and admit to.
But that was there. I mean, there was so many. There was like a stack of Playboy magazines. There was an old twin mattress, and everybody used to say, who the heck would even sit on that? But out of nowhere, in the middle of a greenhouse, in the middle of the woods.
Yeah.
So you figure, but as kids, we didn't think so much as like maybe a homeless person had been there, or just a club. We wanted to make it a clubhouse. So we'd go back to get stuff like, I'm going to bring this to the clubhouse, and all this other stuff. There was no houses in that area like it looked like it belonged to. We go back and we couldn't find it.
Yep.
I can't explain it.
Yep. Yeah, it's weird. Yeah, it sounds like we've had very similar experiences.
Does it have something to do with dead ends? Is there something about having a thoroughfare where people are always going through it and then you cut it off and then things change and then there's suddenly a disruption in the force or something?
Well, yeah, it's funny because that's where Deb's son and I went with the topic. Because when I told him my story after he told me his, we started talking about dead ends in general, about how he's got a theory about dead ends.
Really?
Yeah.
That's so weird. Because I was thinking about that.
Because he started researching it after his experience.
If roads are like human consciousness highways, literally people thinking and driving, always passing the area, and then you cut it off, and suddenly you have like a road here, and then a dead end. You can't get through it. You have almost like a back pressure of consciousness that and memories that are now not moving anymore. They're just stuck there.
Yeah.
So I don't know. You might have anywhere you go, there might be some sort of life force energy thing happens. And if you cut that off, things like freeze in time because there's no longer people going there very often except kids exploring.
Yeah.
That's so weird.
And then kids are more, sensitive to things.
Yeah, and often they're sensitive to things without thinking they're sensitive to things. I mean, you're just kind of open to whatever is going on.
Yeah.
And you're more
nobody's going to think
accepting.
you're crazy. They're going to just think you're a kid.
Right.
And that's why I think a lot of these things happen, and they happen to us, and we weren't willing to let the things go. I had experiences very young, very young, and a lot of the people that I meet have had experiences very young. And they say, well, you're a child, you're closer to the, you just came through as a soul, and you're closer to the other side, and all this, and I don't discount anything. I've always said that I know enough to know that I don't know anything enough to say I don't know, or it doesn't exist, because I don't have the answers. I'm still looking through and enjoying all the different experiences and the wow of stuff. To have, I've had stories of good buddies that went, that took a wrong road and passed, died, and then come back because they're trying to stop a friend or somebody, a family member that was kind of sort of going down the same road, and just came back to help, as almost like it was not a penance, but an energy boost. Like, if I do this, I'm not just helping you, I'm helping me. So I think what if that carries over into living? If we were doing that while we were living, we wouldn't have to come back and do it when we're dead. You see? So, I mean, there's so many different things here. I mean, we probably touched on, multiple, like Josh said, that, many of these go into each other and bleed over into another. And, again, we've got all these little puzzle pieces. We don't have the cover to the box, and we don't even know how many pieces there are to the puzzle, or even if it's mixed puzzles, And that's the beauty of the subject.
And there's no edge. You can't build the border first.
Right.
Yeah.
That's so true.
Right.
With puzzle pieces, edges.
It's so true. Yeah. So I don't know is there any of the, in the word association thing that we did here, is there any that we didn't touch on that you'd like to bring up? Or do you think that you touched on all the ones that you had stories with, or is there a story you'd like to tell that just intrigued you like Josh did, Joey?
I think if we were to go any more, it would be in a whole nother hour and a half.
Probably so.
I do have something that
please.
that I want to just kind of drop in there. We don't need to cover it in detail since we're running out of time, but talking about the multidimensional stuff, this was recent where I was meditating, and first of all, I need to say that Sam Harris's meditation training that he does he's got an app for the phone called I forget what it's called. I think it's called Awake, but it's really, really good, and his perspective on meditation is great, because he kind of points out some of the things that if you start noticing them, they can help improve the effect of the meditation practice. Anyway, so when I was going through that, I suddenly had this awareness of the shape of things and I know that's it sounds very vague, but I suddenly had an understanding of how reality works. And I mean, I don't know if it's true or not. Like, you know what I mean? Sometimes you feel like you're getting a profound answer.
A snapshot of the mechanics.
Yeah, it was like a snapshot of the mechanics of things. And I got this understanding that I've been trying to explore further directly, through meditation to try to see if I can learn more about it. But the gist was that when you're meditating and you get to a state of something like samadhi, where you start to feel the connection between that you realize that your body is smaller than you are, right?
Oh yeah, that's so weird.
And that's a common sensation that you get when you start to realize that you are both outside and inside of that form.
Mm-hmm.
And
when I'm really hungover and I take a lot of ibuprofen, that happens every time.
But man, all right, that's what I should do. I'm going to drink heavily tonight, and I'm going to take ibuprofen.
Terrible morning.
So anyway, the best way to describe it, it's going to sound really mundane, but it's kind of like our bodies that we have are kind of like, what a scientific glove box is, where you've got those gloves that push into a box.
A glove box.
Well, it's called a glove box, but a lot of people reference they call a glove compartment. They'll call like a glove compartment in your car a glove box.
Oh yeah, but a laboratory glove box.
A laboratory glove.
Where you put
box.
your hands in the gloves, but your gloves and your hands both wind up inside of a box, so you can work on things.
Exactly.
In the beginning of The Simpsons, right? Isn't
Yeah.
he?
Yeah. I think Homer drops something in a glove box that he shouldn't. Anyway, but it's kind of like that. But we actually occupy, I'm going to just say fifth dimensional space to kind of separate it from the four we're familiar with.
Right.
Is our actual self occupies vast volume of within this fifth dimension, and we are literally pushing into, our physical form is pushing into the three-dimensional or 3+ time dimensional space that we're familiar with, and that we're literally, it's almost like we're really just kind of just touching on reality. We're not even, this reality, and that reality, by pushing into it, you're creating it, and you're creating it with others that are pushing into it as well.
Wow.
And so we're all kind of pushing into this meniscus of reality, this thin film of 4 dimensions, is really just, it's nothing compared to what the space we truly occupy. And
wow.
It's like a finger puppet.
Yeah, we're a bunch of finger puppets, and that space that we actually occupy, we share indiscriminately with all the other personalities of infinity. Is
wow.
probably the best way I can describe it.
Like everybody's looking into the same place, and if you were to turn around, everybody would be there.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. In a way. Yeah.
But it makes sense. It makes sense. The way you describe it, it makes sense. So the question is not only everything you're saying matches up to everything basically on this list as well. Like we said in the beginning. You follow what I'm saying here? Because, I've often said, just because, we can't physically on a daily basis, some I guess can go into other dimensions and experience that and come back and pop back in, doesn't mean other beings or other things cannot which is, so you could get your Bigfoots, possibly your chupacabra.
I would say with
Right.
say with practice, anything could do that.
Right.
Yeah.
And anything with
shadow
consciousness.
people, extra dimensional beings, aliens, what we consider to be aliens, anything like that. And you asked too, where would we go if you could pick to be reincarnated? Where would you go? I'm imagining it's so vast, the choices, because there's got to be so many other planes and places and plateaus that we could be on to exist in a higher way. I'm sure there's lower places. Well, if not
Dolphin Planet, then maybe
there
Humpback Whale Planet.
Right. But
I wouldn't want to be a tree.
You have to imagine there's also lower places as well. This can't be the worst place. I would assume it's bad because we still have wars and we still have riots in the streets for no apparent reason, or we say there's a reason, but that's not the whatever.
Or you could be an animal on this planet.
Yeah.
You could be like a carnivore or, anything.
Yeah, like, Buddhist or, whatever. I was just thinking that the other day when
you could be a fish on the dolphin planet.
There you could. I was just thinking that working in the garden with an ant, and I'm thinking, all life is sacred. I have no reason to have to kill this ant, I mean, it's weird how you think sometimes and how you remember. I'm remembering the old Kung Fu show that was on with David Carradine, when I was a kid. The things that implant into your brain, like you were saying, parables that come in and that key seems to click and you hear the tumblers go, where, all life is precious, that kind of thing. I think.
And David Carradine also,
yeah.
A suspicious death there, but anyway, go on.
Yeah, it's a bad way for such a cool character to go out of. But then again, actors aren't the characters they portray. But it was a cool concept. The whole show is a cool concept because we were getting a taste of that different life and the calmness. Because like I said, as a kid, I was working with the anger too. So it's like, don't be angry. Everything is calm. Be cool. Like much like you working with your bully and things like this. It all comes full circle. And I think the theme of tonight is we could all be better finger puppets to each other.
Yeah, I think. Yeah.
Seriously, think about it. Because if we are finger puppets and we're all pushing into that, then we're all part of the same big hand or the same big body of existence. And if we are reacting to each other in a bad way, I mean, I had a guy who said NDA. He's had 3 near-death experiences. I don't know why they call it that, because he actually died and then came back. But each time he learned a little more, and he said, you do have to go through all the interactions. You do have to relive the things. And, so when the 3rd time he came back, now he hugs everybody. And he says, I'm not hugging you, I'm hugging me. Because when I go back, I'm going to need those hugs. And I thought that was the most beautiful thing I've ever heard. And why not? You know what? Just be cooler to each other, because we don't know. There's so many things here going on. So I can't thank you guys. And I've kept you guys here for so long. I could go another hour with you guys. We're going to have to do it again. Is there any place we can find you? Is there any links that you'd like to give? That meditation, do you want to give that another plug on that? I'll even put a link in the description if you want. That sounds like a wonderful meditation app.
Yeah, it's called Waking Up. It's from Sam Harris. It's really interesting because he's actually he's an atheist, but he's got a very profound sense of spirituality that is very clear. Like I don't know if I dare say he's enlightened, but he has a very clear understanding of what that space is like that we actually occupy. And he's very clear about how he encourages you to witness it directly. And so regardless.
Oh, the drive home, by the way, last night when I dropped you off here, and the drive home, I might have texted you like when I got home. I just felt really like super enlightened just because I was listening to some old songs that you put the album on and I listened to it the rest of the way home. And I kept thinking to myself, and I wrote it down and put it everywhere, and I texted people about it, how it just, life is truly ecstatic if you really pay attention to it.
Yeah.
And on the way home, I was listening to the song and driving, and it was raining, or maybe it wasn't raining. It doesn't matter. It was just, I was focusing and just experiencing life on the way home because, I didn't have anything to be mad at myself about. So, and so the experience was amazing. And I just, I don't know. That's pretty much it.
But it can be that way. We often say, you're talking about meditation, the app, and that might help somebody who's seeking, a little peace in these times. Everybody's looking for outlets. Some are planting gardens and working outside. And I had the same experience today. It was like I took a trip back in time because I got my iHeartRadio out and I put 1975 classics on or something and just rolled with it. But it's wild how music will take you back where you were.
Yeah, it's like a time machine.
It is. Yeah. It really truly is. And I suggest everybody do that. Put on your, the year you graduated high school.
I would say part of you does go back in time.
It's
like a ghost of you does go back in time when you hear those old songs.
It's wild.
Yeah. And I mean? But just a tiny piece of you goes back.
The colors, the flowers, they seem brighter and the wind was just warmer and the sun was, we can do that. We can change. If you don't like the reality you're sitting in right now, get up and do something about it, find that outlet, Joey, tell us your channel. Tell us how to find you. I don't know if you've got times down there. I know you're kind of going after Craig Mason, and he's moving this week, so it's a little crazy. But tell us where to find you.
So I think to find me directly, it's like YouTube.com/The Truth Experiment. I guess that's what my actual address is. But Joey Mormann, if you look it up on YouTube, I do every Monday and Thursday. 10 p.m. on, and sometimes I fill in for people, and sometimes I do Saturdays if I feel like it. My Twitter is theglib, TheGlib, no spaces. And I just don't have a lot of Twitter followers, so show up. Sometimes I say stuff. So
I show up and I say stuff.
yeah. So
that's so awesome. Yeah, I can't tell you how much I've enjoyed this. I think the way we set this up, it was really nice to touch on a lot of subjects and really open up some things. And who knows, we may have given somebody an idea where to find their own skeleton key to open up some of the questions and answers to some of the questions they have. That's cool.
So. I think that might be the whole point of everything.
Yeah, and I think at the very least we I know I had some tumblers turn.
Me too.
From this call, so I
much fun. Yeah.
Hopefully, it did the same for others as well.
Oh yeah.
I
hope so.
There's so many things I couldn't say. I mean, not couldn't say, but there's so many things that
just
could have been said.
Time.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, we'll do it again.
If I even started, it'd be another 2 hours.
Yeah, it's a date. We'll do it again. We'll wait a couple months. We'll come back and we'll do this again, and I'll have new words for you.
Okay. Yeah, right. No, that worked. I think that was good.
Yeah. Thank you so much, gentlemen. Ladies and gentlemen, the Mormanns.
Thank you so much for having us.
Oh, thank you. It's been an absolute blast, and it's just you opened my eyes to a lot of different possibilities too, and I hope we did that for the listeners. Thank you all so much, and it was a great walk through the gate tonight, and I can't wait to do it again.
Likewise.
Good night, guys.
Good night.
Good night.
Thank you so much tonight to my dear friend, my new dear friend, Joey Mormann. Check out his YouTube channel. It's a different experience. You never know what you're going to get. You might get some fantastic music, and he's an extremely talented musician. You might be lucky enough to have Josh, his brother, visiting in, and those are great shows, sometimes callers, but I can tell you that everybody in the live chat, Zozo Dude 77 and Gary Fleshner and Lee Worth and just everybody in there, just so many good people to talk to and just chill and enjoy a conversation that you're never really sure where you're going to start and you're never sure where it's going to end, but you're always glad that you came. So that's Joey Mormann's show. He is also a friend of Craig Mason, somebody I love dearly. Craig Mason's A Reasonable Conversation also on YouTube. And I thank so much for Josh coming in and adding so much to that conversation. It was just lovely. And I'm so glad to have met you. And thank you for coming on the show. To all the listeners out there, I would just want to remind you that we've got the merchandise, episode art. I always put Crispy. That's our little mascot, little ghost. Who doesn't know he's a ghost? He's got a whole story. But anyway, he's so cute, and he's got, your typical mugs and t-shirts and pillows. A lot of people ask me, do you have a crispy pillow? Yes, I do. And he's great, I guess, to hold on to while you listen to scary stuff in the dark and drink your adult beverage or your hot beverage or whatever your choice is. So that link is at the bottom. There'll be a link to the book. That's my book, that Steve Stockton jumps in on too, is We Are All Children in the Wilderness of the Afterlife, A Guided Tour Through a Haunted Life. There's a lot of these different stories in there. This is stuff that's happened to me. Steve jumps in, much like our conversations here, and tells you if he's got a story that's similar or if it reminded him of a story or his thoughts on it, which is kind of nice. And that's available in Kindle version or paperback. And it's also newly put out, so there's new chapters in there. So we added I think it was like 3 more chapters to it when we got it in print. So that's available on Amazon. The link's at the bottom. We've got our Facebook page, Journey Through the Gate, Paranormal Portal Podcast, Gatekeepers. That's our Facebook group. You can jump in there, talk to a lot of great people. We have a lot of people. Some of them you may know from TV and being on this show and so many other shows. A lot of really great people on there. A lot of knowledge in that group. Also, I'd like to holler out to High Strangeness group. Steve Stockton's there, and that's a really great group as well on Facebook. So there you go. If you have any ghost stories, you want to send them in, Journey Through the Gate at gmail.com, or hit me up in the comments here on our YouTube channel of the same name. And we keep it simple here, guys. Just keep, If I had known I was going to do all this when I started the name, I would have put just the gate. But I believe that was taken. So anyway, there you go. Thank you so much for sitting with us. Thank you so much for joining also the YouTube channel and all the podcast catchers out there. Just wonderful listeners. We've been doing this for just going on a couple years now, and I've met some really wonderful people along the way. Some of my favorite ones are you guys, the listeners who comment and say, hey, that reminded me of this, or I had that happen to me, or I wondered what that was, and that's so cool that somebody else had that experience. So there's a couple of different experiences tonight, and I hope one of them touched your heart and maybe gave you an idea of, where to look for more answers, or just made you feel good that somebody else had one just like you. And that's what we do here. So thanks so much for coming in tonight. And remember, keep your feet under those covers and keep your closet door shut, because there are things that go bump in the night.